Hello, and thank you for joining us for the online public information session for the Oxford Street West and Gideon Drive intersection improvements environmental assessment. I will give everyone a few more minutes to log on. Again, seeing lots of people starting to log on. Thank you for joining us. We will begin the webinar momentarily. Just give everyone one more minute. All right, it's great to see everyone continuing to log on. We are going to go ahead and get started. Hello, thank you for joining us. Again, this is the online public information session for the Oxford Street West and Gideon Drive intersection improvement environmental assessment. My name is Megan Fontaine. I'm with the Communications Division at the city, and I will be your moderator for today's meeting and the Q&A session at the end. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, for taking the time to participate. Your input is really important to us. I'd also like to thank Councillor Hopkins for joining us to observe today's meeting. We are really grateful for everyone being here today. Before we begin, I'd like to share the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, and Lunapawak peoples who have long-standing relationships to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. Additionally, there is a growing urban Indigenous population who make the City of London home. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations of Turtle Island. Since we are doing this virtually, I will take a few moments to go over the engagement guidelines for the session. So we have the project team here to do a presentation and update you on the environmental assessment. And this will be followed by a Q&A session. Just a reminder that you can see us, but we can't see you. So your mics are off as well as your cameras. To send us your questions or comments throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We have disabled the chat feature and are asking that all questions and comments are left in the Q&A button. If you are on the phone listening to this webinar, the best way to share your questions would be to email the project manager, Paul, directly, and we can get your questions that way. I am going to enable closed captions. I will do that momentarily because I want to ensure those are on for the meeting. And as always, if there's anything you need clarification on tonight, please feel free to reach out to us or the project manager directly. Just a reminder that if you do lose internet connection, please be assured that you can rejoin at any time and you can always watch the webinar later, as we will have it posted on getinvolved.london.ca /oxfordgideon. We'll have that on there as of tomorrow. So if you just give me one moment, Adam, I'm going to enable the closed captions before we proceed. Just bear with me for a moment. Okay, Adam, I think just for the essence of time, I'll have you proceed, and I'm going to keep working on the back end to get these closed captions up and running.
Great, thank you very much, Megan. So my name is Adam Mildenberger. I'm a transportation planner with RV Anderson Associates Limited, commonly referred to as RVA, and we've been retained by the City of London to undertake this environmental assessment study. So typically that would be called an EA study. I'm also here supported by other key members of the project team from RVA. That includes Henry Hutari, the project manager, Tisha Doucette, an ecologist, and Connor McIsaac, an environmental assessment planner. I myself will be doing the bulk of the presentation today, but we'll all be here available for answering any of your questions you may have at the end of the presentation. With respect to the agenda for this presentation, I will provide a brief overview of what the study area is and the objectives of this study. I will also speak to the EA process. I'll provide a description of the existing conditions of the study area, and also describe the problem, or what's called an opportunity statement, that we've defined for this study. I will describe alternative solutions that have been considered, as well as describe the currently preliminary study recommendation. Finally, I will conclude with discussing next steps for the project, as well as our Q&A period. So our study area consists of the intersection of Oxford Street West and Gideon Drive, as well as the immediate area surrounding the intersection. The EA was initiated primarily due to the ongoing and planned development in the area, the current connection of Kains Road at the north side of the intersection, and the anticipated growth in traffic on Oxford Street and Gideon Drive. So there are 5 key opportunities that this study is seeking to address. Firstly, we'll be looking at addressing traffic operations and safety considerations. Second, the active transportation needs of the intersection and the study area. Third, support for the city's climate emergency action plan goals. Fourth, consideration for potential roadway drainage improvements and stormwater management. And fifth, opportunities to upgrade underground services such as water main, storm, and sanitary sewer where required. So this infographic here you see on the slide, this figure, this is an overview of the EA process. So this EA study is classified as a Schedule B EA, meaning that it includes phases 1 and 2 of the EA process. So phase 1 includes the development of a problem or opportunity statement, which is followed by phase 2, which is the current phase we are at, which is the development and evaluation of alternative solutions. For this study, one of the key features of phase 2 includes a public information center, which is what we're undertaking today. Our study team is primarily consisted of key project staff from the City of London, as well as key staff from RVA, but it also includes the variety of stakeholders and the public that have been engaged during this project and will be continued to be engaged until the project's conclusion. So for the next few slides, I'm just going to give a brief overview or a description of the existing conditions for the study area as it pertains to this study. So this image here is taken from the city's official plan. It's an image illustrating the natural environmental characteristics of the study area. So you know what, I'm going to turn my laser pointer on here. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of some of the key features of the study area as it pertains to the natural environment. So that includes the cold water, tributary sea, and associated provincially significant wetlands, commonly referred to as PSWs, and significant valley lands. And you can see that's up here to the northwest of the intersection. And to give you some context, where my laser pointer right here is, that is the intersection of Oxford Street, Gideon Drive, and Kains Road. A majority of the study area is within groundwater protection areas. And there have been identified deer mortality issues west of the intersection on Oxford Street. With respect to the cultural heritage resources of the area, there are 3 properties listed on the city's heritage registry. And with respect, and there are 3 properties identified as potential built heritage resources. With respect to the archaeological resources of the area, the entire area, or the entire study area, has been previously disturbed. So that's through the construction of ditches, road, and buried utilities. And the study area has been cleared of any archaeological potential. With respect to the socioeconomic environment, Oxford Street is a major east-west corridor. It provides a key connection with the city, between the west of the city limits and the downtown core, as well as to key destinations such as Fanshawe College and the London International Airport. There's ongoing and future development planned in this area and in the immediate vicinity of the intersection as well. You can see this map down here at the bottom right of my screen. It's taken from the City of London's official plan, illustrating the development pattern of the area. So for example, with the intersection being right here where my laser pointer is, this red dashed line represents the urban growth boundary. So the intersection is within the city's urban growth boundary. The yellow shaded area surrounding the intersection is considered neighborhood or future community growth. And then we also have some green areas that fall outside of the urban growth boundary to the west of the intersection, which consists of green space and lands for environmental review and farmland as well. With respect to transportation, the intersection is currently an unsignalized intersection. So currently Oxford Street, which generally runs in an east-west orientation, is free flow. There's no stop sign or no traffic signal. For Gideon Drive, which is considered the south approach of the intersection, that is currently stop controlled. And Kains Road, which provides access to the residential subdivision to the north, is also stop controlled. The traffic volumes in this area, and specifically at this intersection, are projected to increase. And I'm going to speak to that a little bit later in the presentation. Sidewalks are currently provided on the east side of Kains Road, but there are no formal active transportation facilities such as sidewalks or pathways or cycle track, multi-use path on either Oxford Street or Gideon Drive. The city's cycling master plan recommends what's called buffered paved shoulders on Oxford Street. So what a buffered paved shoulder is Oxford Street would have a white edge line at the edge of the traveled lane, which the vehicles use. And then there would be a paved shoulder section that cyclists could utilize. And when I say buffered, that means that white edge line would actually be much more thicker than what you normally see. And it would likely be 2 lines running parallel, commonly with some sort of hatching or something in between it, which increases the separation between cyclists who are riding in the shoulder and vehicles which are in the travel lane. The cycling master plan recommends typical paved shoulders on Gideon Drive. So that would be your paved shoulder for your cyclists, separated from vehicles by a single white edge line. And it recommends a multi-use path on Kains Road. So a multi-use path is typically designed as an asphalt path, typically 2.5 to 3 meters wide, and would be able to accommodate both pedestrians and cyclists. So we've developed a problem or opportunity statement in this study. The problem or opportunity statement outlines the need and justification for the overall project. It establishes the general parameters, also known as the scope of the study. There are three key elements that comprise our problem or opportunity statement. Number one, the intersection currently does not balance the full range of potential users within the community, including users of all ages and abilities, pedestrians, cyclists, transit vehicles, and motorists. Number two, the intersection is not anticipated to accommodate future traffic demand. Number three, the existing water mains and sewers in the vicinity of the intersection, they are positioned to provide opportunities for future connection to designated development lands. Through this study, we've developed 4 alternatives that have been evaluated. Alternative 1 includes do nothing. Alternative 2 is signalizing the intersection. Alternative 3 includes implementing a single lane roundabout. And alternative 4 is a multi-lane roundabout. And I'm going to describe each one of those in a little more detail in the next few slides. So alternative 1, do nothing. This alternative consists of no operational or safety improvements to the intersection. Based on our studies that we've undertaken, we anticipate that the intersection in its current configuration is not able to sufficiently accommodate the future growth in travel demands. In its current configuration, it does not accommodate active transportation needs as defined by our problem and opportunity statement. And again, overall, it does not address the overall problem and opportunity statement for this study. Alternative 2, signalizing the intersection. This would be implementing a signal at the intersection. Currently, there are 2 curves on Oxford Street, just to the east and west of the intersection. Introducing a signal at this location may not be the most desirable from safety standpoint. You can imagine yourself traveling around the curve or the bend, approaching a signal. Maybe you're not familiar with the area and you are not aware that you're approaching a signal. And if you're speeding, this could create a safety issue. Secondly, when the signal is in red phase, traffic would be stopped on Oxford Street for a designated amount of time. So vehicles coming around the bend may approach the back of the queue, or what you would also call the back of the line of cars stopped at the stop bar. So there's a potential for a safety issue there that needs to be considered. Introducing a signal would also increase noise and air pollution. So you can imagine with the changing of the signal lights from red to green, you would have an increase of stopping and restarting of vehicles on Oxford Street. So those are things that contribute to the noise and air pollution. And also the traffic signal provides only a minor traffic calming benefit to the corridor. With the majority of traffic at this intersection traveling east and west along Oxford Street, you can anticipate that the signal is going to rest on the green signal, the green phase, for the majority of time for the Oxford Street approaches, and would likely only switch to a red phase when demand for left turns from either Gideon Drive or Kains Road exists. So if people are using this corridor as a commuter corridor and they're used to using it every day, they may become used to it being in the green phase and not accustomed to hitting a red phase. So having that lack of expectancy for a red phase can create a safety issue. And in general, the signal does not provide a traffic calming benefit. Vehicles could potentially maintain their existing traveling speed right through the intersection rather than slowing down to be a little cautious as they approach an intersection of multiple roads. Alternative 3 includes a single lane roundabout. So this is a traditional roundabout. This would improve accommodation for pedestrians and cyclists. And it's also considered an improvement with respect to traffic calming compared to the signal. So with a roundabout, traffic approaching the intersection from all approaches, regardless of what turning movement the traffic is going to make, is required to reduce their speed in order to safely and properly travel through the roundabout. However, we've undertaken traffic modeling of the roundabout to identify how would it operate in the future with the projected growth in traffic. And we found that there's potential for some capacity concerns on the east leg of the intersection. So you can see my laser pointer right here. Traffic is expected to be quite significant for this east leg of the intersection, as vehicles leaving the city during the peak hours are anticipated to either travel through or make a left to go south on Gideon Drive. So you can see that the traffic splits onto two separate approaches, but it's combined on this approach. So there's a heavier demand for capacity on this approach of the roundabout. So that has led us to the development of Alternative 4. Alternative 4 is a multi-lane roundabout. It's not a true multi-lane roundabout in that we have two internal circulatory lanes fully around the roundabout, but it's somewhat of a partial multi-lane roundabout where we have two lanes on the north side of the roundabout. These are targeted improvements with the goal of providing additional capacity to accommodate that projected growth in traffic that I was speaking about. So in this configuration, we would have two approach lanes on the east leg of the intersection to help properly accommodate the demands for the through movement and the left turn. Under this configuration, the queuing of cars, that being the lineup of cars, and the delays experienced by motorists at the roundabout are expected to be low and what we would consider acceptable. This also provides an opportunity for future integration with any potential future widening of Oxford Street. If Oxford Street east of the intersection were widened in the future to a 4-lane cross-section, that being 2 lanes per direction, that could be easily integrated into this roundabout configuration. This roundabout also provides accommodation for pedestrians and cyclists. And in a future slide, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and speak to how pedestrians and cyclists would be accommodated through a roundabout. And similar to the standard roundabout, this multi-lane roundabout is considered a traffic calming improvement for the intersection, as well as for the corridor as a whole. So we've evaluated these 4 alternatives based on multiple criteria. These criteria include traffic operational and safety considerations, impacts to the socioeconomic environment, impacts to the natural environment and climate change considerations, impacts to cultural heritage resources, and what are the costs of the 4 alternatives. So this is essentially an infographic or a figure that illustrates our evaluation. We have the 4 alternatives and the multiple criteria. And based on our evaluation, alternative 4, that being the multi-lane roundabout, is recommended to be carried forward. So this figure here is a better illustration of what alternative 4, the multi-lane roundabout, would look like. And I'm just going to briefly walk you through some of the key features of the roundabout. So starting from the top left and moving clockwise around, the roundabout will provide landscaping opportunities to create a gateway to the City of London. It provides connectivity and improved safety for the Thames Valley Parkway. It includes the addition of a left turn lane. So you can see here, as we talked about, providing 2 lanes on the approach of the roundabout will increase the capacity of the roundabout and will ensure the roundabout operates under an acceptable level of service during those critical peak hours. So during those commuter hours, which is the AM peak hour and the PM peak hour of a typical weekday. Under this configuration, the roundabout is expected to accommodate that projected growth in traffic. It also provides flexibility for a potential future right turn channel. So you can see right here, there's this dashed line. And what a channel is a lane, a vehicle lane that would come from Gideon Drive and essentially bypass the roundabout and continue on to Oxford Street. This would take a lot of traffic demand out of the intersection, which would improve operations for the roundabout and reduce delays and improve travel time for traffic traveling from Gideon Drive to Oxford Street, especially during those peak hours. So there is opportunity to construct such a lane in the future should it be determined that such a lane is needed. There's also an opportunity on the south approach of the roundabout here for what's called a pocket left turn lane into an access for a future development. The city may consider closing off that left turn lane in the future if it's determined it's required from an operational or safety standpoint by extending this raised median. This is also called a splitter island. By extending that splitter island south along Gideon Drive, blocking this driveway. The roundabout will be fully illuminated, and this full illumination would be extended eastwards to Westelbourne along Oxford Street. There would also be new pedestrian and cyclist crossings at each leg of the roundabout. So these are called PXOs, or pedestrian crossovers, these crosswalks. They include a refuge on the splitter islands that are designed a certain size. So if you were crossing the crosswalk, you can do each crosswalk one at a time. So we call that a two-stage crossing. It's very common with roundabouts, and it's a safety improvement. And it also includes ramps. So as I talked about before, as per the City of London's cycling master plan, buffered paved shoulders are proposed for Oxford Street West, and paved shoulders are proposed for Gideon Drive. So if you were a cyclist approaching the roundabout, for example, from Gideon Drive, in approach to the roundabout, you would then enter a ramp facility, which would take you off of the road level and into the boulevard on a paved cycle path. And this cycle path would then connect you, if you follow my laser pointer, into the network of multi-use paths that are proposed that go around the entire perimeter of the roundabout. As I said before, the multi-use path would typically be designed as a 3-meter wide asphalt paved path, which would accommodate movement by cyclists and pedestrians. And there is a minor property requirement required at the northwest quadrant of the roundabout. So up here, you can see this little red hatched area. And this is where existing ditch encroaches onto private property. This slide here is a summary of some of the key impacts and mitigation measures for this study. With respect to vehicle traffic, pedestrians and cyclists, local and emergency traffic will be maintained during roadworks with detour routes provided for non-local traffic. So essentially a roundabout would be constructed in a staged approach where the entire intersection would not necessarily need to be shut down. The traffic calming enhancements to the intersection and the corridor are definitely considered a plus, and roundabouts are known, as per studies, to reduce the severity of potential collisions. So typically your most severe types of collisions are head-on collisions and right-angled collisions, such as a T-bone. A roundabout essentially would mitigate those collisions. So eliminate most of those collisions. With respect to the social environmental impacts of a roundabout, it provides improved connectivity for the trail users. And only minor property requirement is required with respect to that existing ditch, that little red hatched area I showed in the previous slide. Other than that, the entire roundabout is expected to be able to be constructed within the existing municipal right-of-way. With respect to cultural heritage impacts, any construction staging associated with constructing the roundabout would have to avoid impacts to those identified cultural heritage resources. And any impacted cultural heritage resources may require a property-specific heritage impact assessment. With respect to the natural environment and climate change impacts, the tree preservation and landscape plans will illustrate with native grasses, flowers, and trees to impact vegetation. The benefits to reduction in air pollution due to the reduction of stopping and restarting of vehicles that you would find at a traffic signal. So that benefit is associated with a roundabout. And light shields and bird-friendly roadway lighting is also proposed. With respect to utility impacts, relocation of utilities will be required. There are no anticipated impacts to the water main, sanitary sewers, or gas. And the identification of mitigation measures, these will be further developed during the detailed design stage. As part of this EA process, we take this essentially to a more conceptual or a preliminary design stage. So with respect to the next steps of this study, we will be reviewing and addressing the comments that are submitted as a result of this PIC. It's my understanding that December 8th is the targeted deadline to receive all these comments. We will continue consultation with the various stakeholders and technical agencies. Throughout this process, we will still confirm and revise, if required, our recommendations, that being the preliminary preferred solution. And those revisions may be based on continued engagement and consultation with our various agencies and comments we receive from you, the public. We will prepare and submit a project file report for a 30-day review. And then ultimately the project would proceed to a detailed design stage, which would occur in approximately 2022 to 2023, with a targeted construction in 2024, which of course would be pending council approval and budget. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. So that means we're ready to move on to our Q&A portion of the session. Just wanted to provide an update on closed captions. We are still having some technical difficulties, so if anyone would like information in alternative formats, please leave a message in the Q&A box, and we'd be happy to supply you with this in an alternative format. I will also ensure that the presentation, the recording of this, is uploaded with the captions. In addition to that, just want to let you know that you are welcome to share comments. That doesn't just have to be questions during this session. We're looking forward to having some conversation about what was presented today. We did already see some questions start to come through, so I'll dive right in. There's a question here. I'll read this one out loud. So understanding that the EA area needs to start and end at discrete boundaries, from a traffic point of view, is it conducive to the study to not include Woodhull and Oxford Street as part of the study as it pertains to cut through traffic on Woodhull as a rural connector and the bottleneck intersections of Oxford and Westdale?
That's a good question. I'm not familiar with a cut through traffic issue on Woodhull. That's something we could definitely talk with the city about after this presentation, but that's a good comment.
Yeah, so sorry, I can jump here as well, if I may. It's a good question. It is a bit beyond our study area, but I would generally say if we can improve operations at Oxford and Gideon, it'll discourage people from trying to use Woodhull. I can imagine right now that if people are held up at Oxford and Gideon, they might try to take a shortcut to avoid a problem area. So the key here is to try to improve conditions in our study area to discourage people from using Woodhull. I hope that answers the question, but if it hasn't, please let us know.
Thanks, Henry. Okay, another question here. What would happen to the Oxford speed limit in the area with the options?
So I think either could answer that. Yeah, go ahead, Adam. I know.
No.
Yes, I know the city recently passed some bylaws that reduce the speed limits in that area to 60, and I believe the intent is to maintain that 60 km/h speed.
Thank you. Question here about land expropriations. Where are we at with that? some were under the impression that there would be no need to acquire new lands.
So I can take that one as well, perhaps. Well, the improvements in general can be accommodated within the existing right-of-way. We did identify one area that Adam pointed out on the one slide, the little red hatched area, where there's a sort of a pre-existing property condition with municipal drainage in the ditch and a culvert on private property. So it's functioning. We're recommending that the city acquire that so that they can properly take ownership of that culvert and maintain it and not have it on private property, but it would be impacted by any of our alternatives, regardless of which one is chosen. But that's the only property impact that we've identified or recommended that the city address.
Thanks, Henry. And it looks like we do have the property owner joining us on the webinar today. So I might suggest that the two of you connect separately on this one.
Absolutely. Be happy to answer any questions one-on-one.
Awesome. Okay, just taking a look to see if there's additional questions here. Okay, so questions related to the urban growth boundary. Just speaking to the fact that it's practically been filled in at this point at the west end of town. What additional traffic from growth is being addressed by the other alternatives other than the do nothing options? There is no more further growth at this point that needs to be addressed other than those traveling in from out of the city.
Okay, so when you consider the type of growth we've captured when we do our projections of traffic into the future, it really is broken down into two types of growth. So there's growth in traffic due to development ongoing and planned in the immediate area of the intersection. But then there's also just general corridor growth. So with these roads, Oxford Street and Gideon, being arterial corridors that provide connection between various communities, typically speaking, we see a growth over time. It could be a 1% or a 2% growth. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head what percentage was considered in this study, but that's in our traffic report, and we've consulted with city staff to confirm it was in a reasonable assumption. And those are essentially the two pieces of growth that we consider, and we apply that growth in traffic to the intersection when we do our modeling of the intersection under a future condition.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, comment here around just thanking the team for including the Thames Valley Trail in our assessment of this study, as it does have impacts on the trail. I don't know if we want to elaborate on that and the importance of including that in our decision making and options here.
I can offer some insight if I may. There's actually two trails here, and one is the Thames Valley Parkway, which is the backbone of the city's active transportation system. That is essentially a paved path from one end of the city to another. So this roundabout will provide connectivity for people in the area to get to the backbone of that trail. It's also coincidentally part of the Thames Valley Trail, which runs from St. Mary's to Delaware. So today, the Thames Valley Trail has to use the shoulder of Oxford Street to get down to Kamoka. And there's no good crossing opportunities for folks that want to hike that trail. So these improvements will accommodate both trails and provide safe crossing opportunities and connectivity to access these facilities.
Thanks, Henry. Okay, question about the roundabout design. So can the roundabout design include a cross ride to allow cyclists to ride through instead of having to dismount to cross?
At this time, the provincial guidelines for roundabout designs does not include a cross ride treatment at roundabouts. So essentially, for anyone who's not familiar with a cross ride, they're commonly seen more often at traffic signals, And essentially, it's a different type of crosswalk, either typically beside your pedestrian crosswalk or around it in a way where cyclists are permitted to ride their cycle across the crosswalk or the cross ride. Currently, the provincial guidelines do not provide that as an option for roundabouts. It's my understanding there just isn't enough background studies or justification to support that as a safe crossing treatment. And currently, the only controlled crossing configuration that is provided in the Ontario guidelines is a PXO, or a pedestrian crossover. So essentially, a cyclist has two options. A cyclist may use the ramps. So if a cyclist is approaching the roundabout, they may use the ramps to enter the multi-use path system. And then if crossing one of the crosswalks, they would be required to dismount and cross as a pedestrian. Alternatively, a cyclist may continue riding through the roundabout in the traveled lanes, similar to a regular vehicle. A cyclist is a vehicle as per the Highway Traffic Act. So they have those two options, whether they stay in the travel lane as a vehicle or they exit the travel lane onto the boulevard and cross the crosswalk as a pedestrian.
Thank you, Adam. Okay, just to expand on one of the questions we had before regarding Woodhull and Oxford and cut through traffic. Just as a continuation, the question actually pertains to the roundabout being traffic calming, which to my mind is traffic slowing, which would lead to cut through traffic on rural roads, being Woodhull, which contains plenty of farms and farm machinery.
So when we say traffic calming, it's not essentially traffic slowing. So traffic slowing, what you're really referring to would be the delay you experience at an intersection. So that additional travel time caused by traffic or congestion. Our modeling shows that the roundabout configuration would actually result in less delay, because if you can compared to a signal. So if you can, it's a traffic signal. It depends on what turning movement you're making at the intersection, but in general, the traffic signal is anticipated to result in increased delay because there's a lot of lost time with a traffic signal. Again, it depends what movement you're making at the signal, but with the changing of the cycle and the way the signal timings are set up, there's comparatively a lot more lost time compared to a roundabout, where typically a roundabout will have less delay because there's more of a continuous moving of traffic, and the delay is typically fairly short if there is any delay. And that is different than traffic calming. When we say traffic calming, we're talking about some sort of physical feature in the roadway that it induces a delay in vehicle speeds. So if there was a traffic signal there, if it was a green signal phase for Oxford Street, there may be a lot of vehicles that don't reduce their speeds as they come through the intersection, and they maintain their 60, 70, or 80 kilometer per hour speed straight through the intersection at a signal. Under a roundabout configuration, vehicles just physically cannot do that, and all traffic approaching the roundabout would be required to reduce speed. But we consider this reduction in speed or this calming effect not to result in any notable additional delay. It wouldn't be noticeable in your travel time when you're trying to reach your destination.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, so questions around timelines. Just wondering if we can review timelines again and speak to the detour once construction starts. And then how long will it take to actually complete the fourth alternative?
Henry, maybe for you.
Yeah, thanks. So that's the general schedule right now, is to continue to detail design in 2022-23, and then potentially go to construction in 2024. All of this is pending, available capital budgets and approvals by council. Once it does go to construction, I would anticipate it being finished in one construction season, let's say, which typically starts in mid-May and goes till end of October, say. So somewhere in that time frame, we would be able to construct this intersection.
Thanks, Henry. How will 911 services such as ambulances and fire trucks be maintained throughout the construction period to all involved?
Henry, maybe you're a little familiar with the staging for roundabouts?
Well, for sure. And as Adam was saying in the presentation, the detailed design process would develop a traffic staging scheme that would maintain traffic operations. And we are always cognizant about the emergency services through construction sites. So we either provide temporary detours, bypass detours through the site, or we provide alternative detour routes on other roads. In this case, the way it's been designed, there should be an opportunity to have a bypass around that site while you build the roundabout and maintain emergency services during construction.
Thanks, Henry. Okay, questions about just how we'll make sure that everyone who wants to see this presentation can see it. We will be posting it on getinvolved.london.ca / oxfordgideon. And we also have an email list started for this project, which you can sign up on that same website. So anyone who signed up for our email list, we can also send you a link to this presentation in case you weren't able to join us tonight. But yeah, I would really encourage anyone, if you know of anyone, to share the website link with them. And again, if you sign up for updates on the project through the project webpage, we will email you this kind of content on an ongoing basis. And again, we're all here happy to answer questions or address your comments. So we'll stick around and see if any other questions come through. I think I'll take this opportunity. Oh, we have one more. The website link for the sign up. I will, to sign up for the email updates, I will share that with you in the chat or in the, let me see if I can share it with everyone on the call here right now. Okay, I believe I just sent the link to everyone on the webinar. You will see on the right-hand side of the project website a box that says stay informed, and by entering your email address in that box, you will be added to an email list to subscribe to project updates. Okay, a couple more questions came in. Okay, so this one, can you speak to the hydroecological, hopefully I said that correctly, impacts of this construction? There are a number of properties immediately adjacent to the proposed circle that are on wells. All are shallow wells, less than 40 feet.
Excellent question. This particular project doesn't really involve any deep construction at the moment. These are mostly surface improvements. Having said that, we are also protecting for potential future sanitary sewer extensions to properties that don't currently have them, or protecting for a potential future, water main installation. So it's those operations that'll have to be looked at carefully and designed carefully and constructed carefully to avoid impacts to private wells. Those sorts of things are typically addressed once they get to the detailed design stages and they actually have those things identified more clearly. But I appreciate that you've brought up the point so that it can be considered in the future design stages.
Thank you, Henry. Okay. Just gonna see if we have some additional questions here. Okay, just a comment about roundabouts again here. So just wondering if traffic signals at the intersection is a reasonable option. Those in the area who have seen over the last 3 to 4 years how Woodhull has become a cut through when there is slow down traffic on Oxford. For motor vehicle traffic, the intersection works quite well right now, not so much for other forms of active transportation. And just commenting that this EA cannot be performed without fully addressing the issue of the intersections east and west on Oxford.
Okay. Well, you know, signalizing the intersection was an alternative, and it's a reasonable alternative to consider at this location. You know, but based on our evaluation of different options, the roundabout was the preferred alternative, as it is most able to accommodate that growth in traffic and most able to reduce the delays experienced by road users at the intersection. Our modeling projects that the delays experienced by road users would be higher under a traffic signal versus a roundabout. And then in addition to that, from a traffic operational and safety standpoint, the safety benefits, that the reduction in collisions at a roundabout and the reduction in the severity of those collisions is quite notable when compared to a traffic signal. So we saw those pluses there. I don't know, Paul, if you want to comment about the other part of that question.
Yeah, Adam, for sure. So in terms of the area east of this intersection, the city is currently planning to initiate environmental assessment for the Oxford Street West from Westall Bourne to Commissioners. That will look at the option of widening Oxford Street West to 4 lanes with the improvements for the intersections along that stretch. So we do have plans to improve the area further to the east, and it will be looked at as a separate study and project.
Thanks, Paul. Again, if any other thoughts or questions come to mind, please feel free to send them through. Okay, just some additional comments on the capacity to handle more traffic or heavier traffic at the intersection of Gideon and Woodhull. I guess, are we confident that the alternative being presented will be able to handle the heavier traffic?
Our modeling has shown that the roundabout in the future, and we model typically to a 10-year horizon. So that would be, I believe actually in this case is a little further. I think we went to 2035, and the roundabout configured as we've shown it in the drawings is expected to accommodate the growth in traffic up to that horizon year being 2035, while also maintaining what we call an acceptable level of service. So the level of delay you experience at the roundabout should be quite low, or what we call nominal, and the queuing of cars, so the lineup of cars at the roundabout would also be expected to be quite low. So during those peak hours, so that morning rush and that afternoon rush home to work and work to home at the end of the day, typically the queuing would not be more than 2 or 3 cars for any given approach.
Thanks, Adam. One question about construction, when that time comes, will there be calming measures implemented within the detour plan?
My understanding is that would be something that would be determined at the detailed design stage, right, Henry? When we actually designed the traffic staging and the setup of cones and other devices.
Correct. And just based on what we're hearing today at this Public Information Center, it's been identified that potential cut through on Woodhall is an issue. So, you know, we certainly don't want to see that continue or become exacerbated during construction, because I think there'd be more incentive for people to avoid a construction site and really start to use Woodhall. So, you know, we appreciate the comments being brought forward, because that's something we can certainly address at the detailed design stage and introduce calming measures that will discourage folks or limit folks from trying to use Woodhall when they shouldn't. So definitely those sorts of things will be considered.
Okay, that's great. Yep, definitely an important consideration. So it's good to note that that's going to be addressed. Okay, again, any other question or comments, please feel free to send them on in. And again, I did post the link to the Get Involved site in the chat. Tomorrow, this recording will be made available, as will a copy of the presentation in PDF form if you want to take a look or re-review any of the slides. And yeah, please sign up for the email list if you haven't already, and then that way we can ensure that all future communications goes directly to you. Okay, question came through. Have you consulted with staff at Wood Eden regarding possible impact on camp operations?
Yeah, I believe Camp Wood Eden is just to the west of the study area on the north side, and they would have received a study notice of commencement and notice of PIC, but I don't believe we received any feedback yet. So I can't comment yet. Hopefully they do reach out if they have some comments or concerns. But as of now, no, they have not provided comment.
Thanks, Henry. Sounds like a group we could definitely follow up with to make sure they're well aware of what's going on. It's great to see we still have quite a few with us. So we're approaching the 6 o'clock mark, but we do have lots of time. If any other questions or comments come to mind? Adam, perhaps you can remind the group for how long will we be accepting questions and comments related to this first public information session?
As per this slide, it's my understanding that we're intending to receive comments up until December 8th.
And just a reminder, so yeah, you're welcome to email the project manager, post on our Get Involved webpage, Give us a call, whatever you prefer. It is a great time to start weighing in on these elements. Give everyone a few more minutes in case something comes to mind. I'll also take this opportunity to let everyone know that London is about to begin its mobility master plan. So a citywide plan to come up with transportation plans, policies, and programs that will carry us through the next 25 years. And we'll be doing a big emphasis on moving not just cars, but moving people in a variety of ways. So again, getinvolved.london.ca is kind of your go-to spot to find out what different city projects you can weigh in on and provide feedback on. So please stay tuned for more information on that one, as that is a really good opportunity to get involved for transportation planning for the city as a whole. Okay, we did have another question come through. What traffic studies have been performed so far as to traffic volumes on Gideon approaching Oxford, both using the left turn lane and those using the merging lane heading eastbound? Where do you see the problems presently as to today's traffic volume from all directions at this intersection?
Oh, that's a good question. I have some reference material here in case I have to quote some numbers. I get my numbers right. Yeah, so currently under the existing conditions, so that means not only the existing configuration of the intersection, but current traffic volumes, there's not a capacity issue today. So you may have increased delays turning from Kains Road onto Oxford, for example, because you're gap seeking traffic on Oxford. So you have to wait for those gaps. And if you're traveling on Oxford, which is free flow, well, it's pretty free flow. You're moving through and you're not going to experience much delay, maybe unless you're turning left from Oxford down to Gideon during the busiest hours of the day, at which point you have to gap seek the opposing traffic. So you may have a little bit of delay there. It's not until we grow traffic to that future horizon year at 2035, where our models show that the intersection really starts to break down. So if you can imagine the growth on Oxford Street with traffic growing over the next 10 to 15 years, the gaps between traffic on Oxford will start to decrease, which is going to make things more difficult for traffic on Kains Road or Gideon Drive turning left onto Oxford Street, because they're going to be gap seeking. Oxford is free flow and vehicles will be moving at a good click and it'll be a higher volume. And that is when we start to see a breakdown where one could see significant delays on Kains Road waiting for a safe gap. And then that operational issue then feeds into a safety issue, because what we start to see is increased driver frustration and more risk taking with drivers trying to turn out onto Oxford when maybe it may not be the most safe time to do so, because they're trying to get on within a reasonable amount of time. So that's where we start to see that breakdown, is in that future 2035 horizon year. And that has led us to look at what are the different type of traffic control alternatives we can consider. So we looked at a traffic signal, but then we also looked at as a roundabout as an alternative. And then in looking at the standard roundabout, we were then led into looking at the multi-lane roundabout, which provides that additional lane, which is expected to provide that improved operations at the intersection.
And sorry, Megan, if I can just jump in and add to Adam's question. We did conduct a detailed traffic count at the intersection to obtain accurate data. We actually recognize too that because we're in the COVID situation, that traffic volumes might be reduced. So we did apply some factors to try to account for that, so that we're not underestimating existing traffic conditions. We also looked at traffic studies completed for the developments, and recognizing that some of those are actually partially ongoing. There is traffic actually using Kains Road now. And then we also looked at studies outside of the city, recognizing that there's significant growth in Kilworth and Kamoka. So we looked at previous studies as well to try to get a handle on projected growth in those areas as well. So Adam had a lot of detailed information to look through, and as we said, we have a conservative approach to the growth to make sure we're not underestimating the projections and existing conditions. So just so everybody knows where the information comes from and the sort of things we look at to develop these models and projections.
That's helpful. Thank you, Henry. Awesome. So again, keep questions coming. If anything else comes to mind, we will continue to stick around and be available. Just have another request here to just recap the timeline. So maybe Adam, if you could just kind of walk through the next steps kind of line by line and what that entails.
Mhm. Henry, did you maybe want to do the walkthrough of the next steps? You're a little more well-versed in the EA process than I am.
Absolutely. So following this PIC, we'll have sort of a comment period where we will allow folks that couldn't make it to the PIC to submit comments and perhaps watch the video online and get to know what the project's about and submit questions. So that's typically a 3-week period where we will accept comments. And once we receive all those, we do respond to all formal comments that come forth. We also are continuing consultations with additional stakeholders. And so this consultation period will continue into December. And then once that's completed, we will prepare a project file report, which is a formal EA document. We'll issue that to the city for review. And then once that's been accepted, we'll put it on the record for review for 30 days, during which people can still provide comments on that document. And once that period has expired, it'll be up to council and so forth to formally adopt it, the recommendations. And then it would proceed to detailed design later next year or in 2023. That period will include design. It'll include any utility relocations that might be required. And then once that period is over, it would potentially go to construction in 2024. And again, just so people are aware, it's all depending on council priorities, funding, approvals, budgets, and all those things. But that's the timeline that's been established at this time.
Thanks, Henry. And just so everyone's clear then, this will be the, will there be any future webinars on this topic or no?
No more webinars, but certainly we will accept comments that continue to come in after the webinar. There will be a notice published when the file report is put on the public record, so people are aware that they can view and comment on that document.
Great. And so just so everyone's aware, if you all are already signed up for email updates regarding this project, you will receive that information as we hit these milestones for the rest of the process. So again, I encourage you to sign up for that if you haven't already, and then that just helps you keep tabs on where this project is at as you move forward with the study. And what's great about that too is that if you sign up now and as we move into things like construction down the road, we can keep you informed on those things as well as the project evolves into that phase.
And Megan, if I may add, during the detailed design stages, the city does also make it a practice to conduct a public update meeting so that people, if there have been changes or if they want to see the details of the construction and the design, they're able to do so. So the city does extend that opportunity on all of their detailed design assignments as well.
That's a great point. So yeah, there will actually be another opportunity to have conversations in this kind of setting about the project closer to construction. Question came in here. So will there be a closure during construction and discussion on impacts during construction with regards to rerouting traffic and what this looks like? Will this public update meeting be through this contact list? So I
Yes.
think, yes, yeah.
Yes, the
Okay.
general answer is yes, we will involve the public to make them aware. There'll be further consultations on construction and potential closures. Those details will be worked out at that time. I mean, our goal always is to maintain traffic to the degree possible, but it also has to be constructible and safe for the workers. Having said that, that generally applies to the through traffic on Oxford. We always have to make an effort to maintain access to private properties, again, for emergency services, deliveries, garbage collections, recycling. So those sorts of things are always part of every construction contract to make sure that nobody gets cut off. And then they'll make the best effort they can to maintain traffic while maintaining a safe work zone.
And Megan, just on the contact list, so the city will continue sending notices to people who received like a hard copies of like letters with notice of commencement, notices of this BAC. So we'll keep the same contact list and we'll be extending the email list based on the sign up, as well as major stakeholders and community associations as well. So people, the same people who were notified of this BAC, they'll definitely get the notices of 30-day public review period for this study, as well as the construction updates.
Thanks, Paul. That's right. We'll continue sending notices to everyone who's received them previously, and then anyone who decides to sign up tonight or moving forward will also receive the information. Question just regards to how many people attended this meeting and how many people in the neighborhood actually joined tonight. So it looks like we had approximately 21 people attend tonight's webinar. And like I said, we will be posting this on the website and sharing it on social media with the intent of getting more involved and viewing this presentation over the next month or so. Again, we encourage anyone who's attended tonight to share this with their colleagues, networks who may have an interest in the project, because it is critical to get as much community input as possible. In addition to this webinar, we do also work with the city's advisory committees and share information about the projects with them, which includes community members. And then the project team, as always, is doing some meetings with community groups who have ties with the project as well. Again, please feel free to send through questions, comments, or requests. We're happy to either answer them verbally or get in touch with you directly. Okay. We are seeing a few people start to log off. Again, thank you for everyone who took the time to join us today. We'll still stick around for a bit if there's any final questions. Okay. Just taking a final look to see if there's any more comments coming through. Councillor Hopkins has just wanted to thank staff for the presentation and all the public for attending. So thank you for attending as well, and to everyone. Okay. It looks like most of our participants have logged off. With that, I will close the session. Again, I will post this video tomorrow on Get Involved, and please feel free to share with your networks. And I will send everyone who's newly added to the email list something just to confirm that you've been added. So again, thank you everyone for your time. And with that, I'll close the session. Thank you all.